Right now, every major news anchor is calling this a victory, a ceasefire between the United States, Israel, and Iran. 2 weeks of pause, markets bouncing, politicians shaking hands, and most people watching have absolutely no idea why they should still be terrified. Because this ceasefire is not an ending. It might be the most dangerous beginning this generation has ever seen. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly why, with the dates, the numbers, and the details that mainstream media is already burying. Let's go back to where this actually started. The 2015 nuclear deal, the JCPOA, collapsed in 2018 when Trump pulled the United States out. From that moment, Iran and America circled each other the way two fighters do when they both know the bell is about to ring. Talks failed, tensions climbed, and then in June of 2025, the United States and Israel launched what people now call the 12-day war. American bombers sent directly into Iranian nuclear facilities before a ceasefire landed on June 24th, mediated by the US and Qatar. The world exhaled that time. It told itself the crisis was over. Then came January 2026. Iranian security forces turned on their own citizens during the largest protest movement the country had seen since the 1979 Islamic Revolution, killing tens of thousands of people in the streets. Trump's response was immediate. The largest American military buildup in the Middle East since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. By mid-February, the US and Iran were sitting across a negotiating table again. Indirect nuclear talks running through Oman. The Omani foreign minister said publicly that real progress was being made. Trump called it, and this is a direct quote, something he was not thrilled with. The talks dissolved because the decision had already been made somewhere else. February 28th, 2026, 6:35 in the morning, UTC. U.S. Central Command announced airstrikes against Iran, nearly 900 of them, compressed into 12 hours. The Americans named their operation Epic Fury. The Israelis named theirs Roaring Lion. Together, they sent B-2 stealth bombers, B-1 Lancers, B-52s, Tomahawk missiles, and HIMARS launchers into a country that had been living under sanctions for 45 years. 9 minutes after the American strikes began, at 6:44 UTC, Israeli jets launched what they called decapitation strikes. Leader Khamenei, 86 years old, supreme leader of Iran since 1989, died at his compound, alongside his daughter, his son-in-law, his grandchild, his daughter-in-law. 40 days of national mourning followed, but Khamenei wasn't the only one. The Iranian defense minister, the IRGC commander, the defense council secretary, 4 top Ministry of Intelligence officials. 7 senior Iranian security leaders confirmed dead before the morning was out. And somewhere in southern Iran, near Bandar Abbas, a girls' school took a direct hit. Approximately 170 people killed. The American and Israeli explanation: the school sat adjacent to a military base and a misfired air defense missile caused the strike. Iran called it deliberate. By evening, Iran's retaliation was already in the air. Drones and ballistic missiles heading toward Israel, toward American bases in Bahrain, Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. A drone striking Britain's Akrotiri base in Cyprus. Missiles shot down over Turkey. 3 American service members died that day, the first U.S. casualties of the conflict. The war had fully, irreversibly begun. What most people sitting in America missed completely was a stretch of water 33 kilometers wide, the Strait of Hormuz. Through it flows roughly 20% of the entire world's oil supply. Every single day, Iran shut it down. On February 26, 2 days before the war started, AA recorded the national average for a gallon of regular gas at $2.98. By April 2026, that number had cleared $4 per gallon for the first time since August 2022. A 39% spike in roughly 5 weeks. Crude oil surging past $100 a barrel. Japan's prime minister warned publicly that a closed strait would drain his country's oil reserves within 8 to 9 months, collapsing the Japanese economy with it. India pulls 60% of its oil from that region. China pulls 40%. This is not a Middle Eastern problem sitting safely on the other side of the world. It lands in your gas tank, your grocery bill, your heating costs, whether you have ever looked at a map of the Persian Gulf or not. Replacing Khamenei turned out to be the detail that should have worried everyone most. Iran's assembly of experts named Mojtaba Khamenei, 56 years old, the dead leader's own son, as the new supreme leader. Trump called him an unacceptable choice almost immediately. What the analyst noted was the part that actually mattered. Mojtaba ran close to the Revolutionary Guard. He carried a reputation for being even more hostile toward the United States than his father. His first declaration as supreme leader, "Keep the Strait of Hormuz closed." This was not a softer Iran emerging from the wreckage of its old leadership. This was a harder one. By early April, the toll had accumulated into numbers that demand to be said out loud. Iran had fired more than 5,000 drones, over 2,000 ballistic missiles, and more than 50 cruise missiles. Qatar, one of the world's top natural gas producers, announced it would take years to restore its energy output after Iranian strikes shredded its infrastructure. Gulf Arab nations that had spent decades building reputations as safe, stable global business hubs watched that reputation dissolve in real time. Then came April 7th, 2026. Trump posted on Truth Social before an 8 p.m. Eastern deadline. His exact words, "A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again." Congressional Democrats called it a potential war crime. Pope Leo XIV, the first American pope in history, stood in St. Peter's Square and called for peace, describing attacks on civilian infrastructure as a sign of hatred, division, and destruction. Less than 2 hours before that deadline expired, Pakistan brokered a ceasefire. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's government operating as the go-between for Washington and Tehran. Iran's foreign minister publicly thanked Sharif. Behind the scenes, China delivered the final push that moved Iran to accept. Trump's Truth Social post read, "This will be a double-sided ceasefire. The reason for doing so is that we have already met and exceeded all military objectives and are very far along with a definitive agreement concerning long-term peace with Iran and peace in the Middle East." Iran's Supreme National Security Council confirmed the deal and claimed victory in the same breath, declaring that nearly all war objectives had been achieved. Markets responded within minutes. Brent crude dropped more than 13%, landing at 94.74. The Dow Jones climbed 2,300 points, its best single session since April 2025. But here is the thing about that exhale. The ceasefire started cracking before the ink dried. Lebanon became the fault line almost immediately. Within hours of the announcement, Netanyahu's office confirmed that Israel supported Trump's decision to pause strikes on Iran for 2 weeks, and then added one sentence that changed everything. The ceasefire did not include Lebanon. Israel launched Operation Eternal Darkness against Hezbollah that same day, its largest strike since the war began. 254 people killed across Lebanon. 165 wounded, 92 of those deaths concentrated in Beirut alone. By April 8th, at least 182 more people died in central Beirut from Israeli strikes that landed after the ceasefire was supposedly active. Iran responded by threatening to strike Israel directly if the assault on Lebanon did not stop. Iranian media reported that the Strait of Hormuz reopening, the actual foundation of the entire ceasefire agreement, had been paused because of those Lebanese strikes. Shehbaz Sharif, the man who built this deal, publicly condemned the violations, urging every party to respect the ceasefire for 2 weeks as agreed so that diplomacy could take a lead role. And Iran's Supreme National Security Council put out a statement that deserves to be read slowly. "Our hands are on the trigger, and the moment the enemy makes the slightest mistake, it will be met with full force." Underneath all of this sits a nuclear question, unresolved and immovable. All of Iran's highly enriched uranium remained inside the country, likely entombed at the enrichment sites American bombers struck during the 12-day war the previous June. Trump stated that the United States would work with Iran to dig up and remove that uranium. Iran offered no confirmation of that plan. Trump and Netanyahu demanded complete dismantlement of the Iranian nuclear program. Iran's 10-point peace proposal, the document Tehran submitted as its own terms for the ceasefire, rejected that demand outright. What started this entire conflict? The thing every press conference cited as the justification for nearly 900 strikes in a single morning remained completely unresolved. None of that appeared to affect the Pentagon's budget request, which came in at more than $200 billion in additional war funding, a number that does not signal a government planning for a short conflict. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard told the Senate that Iran's conventional military capabilities had largely been destroyed, and then added the part that most headlines buried completely: the regime appears intact. Here's what this war has cost the people who had the least say in it. Across Lebanon, more than 1,600 people have died. Over 1 million have been displaced. More than 1/6 of the country's entire population uprooted. The IMF's chief warned that every 10% increase in energy prices over 2026 is expected to push global inflation up by nearly 0.5%, which means your costs climb whether the missiles are landing near you or not. 2 weeks, that is the window this ceasefire opened. 2 weeks for two sides that each declared total victory to sit down and negotiate something permanent. With a new Iranian supreme leader who is more hostile than the last. With Lebanon actively burning despite the agreement. With the Strait of Hormuz reopening hanging by a thread. And with a $200 billion Pentagon funding request quietly sitting in Washington, already suggesting that someone in that building has planned for what comes next. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres urged both sides to respect the ceasefire and expressed hope it would be extended. The world is watching. But the question was never really whether this ceasefire would hold. The question is what the world looks like when it doesn't. The strait is not fully open. The nuclear question is not resolved. Lebanon is still burning. Iran's new leadership is harder than the old one. And the United States government just requested $200 billion more to fund a war that officially paused 2 weeks ago. This is not a victory. This is a reload. And the next 2 weeks will determine whether what comes after it is a negotiation or something the world is not ready for.